Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Commissioner.
Hope you're feeling better.
Thank you.
All right, is there a delay or do I automatically know when we started?
Well, it looks like, Lori, the attendees are coming in right now. So if you go to the attendee box, you'll see that they're coming in, and it'll eventually slow down when everybody gets through the virtual door.
Okay. So for those who have joined us, we'll wait a few minutes while everybody kind of joins into this webinar, and then we will get started.
So Lori, do you want us all to turn off our screens unless we're speaking like we have in other webinars, or do you want us all to stay on the line here? You're muted.
Maybe at the beginning we can do some quick introductions and then you guys can turn off your camera until you're talking. That would be good.
Sounds good.
All right, so it looks like we have about 45 participants on the line right now. So we'll go ahead and get started. I'm sure that a few more people will be joining us. My name is Lori Hodges. I'm the Larimer County Emergency Manager. And really the purpose of today's town hall is it's not to really spend the entire hour and a half providing you information. It's really to figure out what are the questions that folks have and how do we best help you with those questions. So we do have a few folks who are going to speak tonight, and then we will really pass it off to being able to give you guys the opportunity as community members to ask questions. So I am going to first have some folks that are on our panelists. I want to have them introduce themselves so you kind of know who's on the line and who you guys can ask questions of. And then we will kind of go from there. So Alan, do you want to start with the building department?
Yeah, my name is Alan Key. I'm a plans examiner and was on the damage assessment team with Larimer County Building.
Great. Shale.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Shale Sabo. I work for the Larimer County Office of Emergency Management as an emergency management coordinator. I am also the recovery manager for the COVID pandemic side of recovery, but I'm leading the community resilience side of wildfire recovery.
Okay, Greg Hansen.
Hello, I'm Greg Hansen. I'm a meteorologist with the National Weather Service office in Boulder, and we are the agency that will provide any flash flood warnings for any flooding that we might have that result from this burn scar.
All right, great. And Triste, do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Yes, Triste Hughes. I'm the service hydrologist at the National Weather Service. I work with Greg.
Okay, thank you. And Derek, do you want to go ahead?
Good evening, everybody. Derek Garter, Program Manager with Summit Stone Health Partners. We are the Crisis Counseling Program Colorado Spirit, responding to COVID, as well as responding to folks who've kind of been doubly impacted between the wildfires and the pandemic. As a team, our program offers emotional support, presentations around psychoeducational tips for helping folks kind of bounce back and build upon resiliency following a disaster, and are present for presentations and town halls like this one. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Stephen, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I'm Stephen Decatur. I work for the Larimer County Office of Emergency Management as an emergency management coordinator.
All right, Claire.
Hi, everybody. I'm Claire Bouchard, and I'm with the United Way of Larimer County, and I'm co-chair of the Long-Term Recovery Group, and I also co-chair the Unmet Needs Committee, which is distributing the Larimer County recovery funds that we've been collecting through United Way.
All right, great. Bob Overbeck.
Yes, good evening. I'm Bob Overbeck, your Larimer County Assessor, and I'm here to answer any questions on valuations or considerations as you may think about rebuilding, what you might have questions for the assessor's office.
All right, great. And then I think that's everybody except for we have two commissioners who have joined us. I'd like to introduce Kristen Stevens. Go ahead.
Thank you, Lori. Hi, everyone. I'm Kristen Stevens. I'm the newly elected county commissioner in District 2. So Been on the job for about a month now and happy to take any questions you have.
All right, and John Kafalis is here as well.
Thank you, Lori. Good evening, folks. John Kafalis, Larimer County Commissioner, District 1, which is the northern 1/3 of Larimer County. I'm also currently the board chair. And as Kristen said, we're here to listen. I will be taking notes, and we want to better understand how we can do an even better job of responding to your needs and your concerns. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So just a couple of housekeeping items, since this is a town hall session. We will be taking some questions. So for anybody who's just calling in on the phone, you can dial *9 to kind of raise your hand and let us know that you'd like to ask a question, and we can call on you. For those who are on the computer and you're watching, you can just raise your hand. There's a button towards the bottom that just says raise hand. You could do that, and then just unraise your hand once you've asked your question or we've called on you. And I'll work to make sure I unmute you, and I'm kind of new to this format, so I have a couple of backup people that are going to be helping me with that. So otherwise, what I thought that we would do is for the panelists, if you guys wanted to go ahead and turn off your camera if you're not speaking, that way people kind of know who they're talking to. We'll start with some general information. What I wanted to do was start with the National Weather Service. We've had several questions from the public about alerts and warnings about what we're going to be facing with regard to flooding, possibly for this season, or even wildfire. So I thought we would start with Greg Hansen and Trista Hughes just to talk through a few things, and then I'll put up some information too. I'll share my screen from a newsletter that we sent out about how to get a weather radio from Noaa, and it just has some instructions on how to do that. So for those areas that may not have good telephone service or internet service, a weather radio is really the place to go. So Greg, do you want to go ahead and start, and I will put that up as you're speaking, or do you have some slides or anything you wanted to show?
No, I'll just talk, and if you want to put that up there, that's fine.
Okay.
Okay. Well, thanks, Lori, for the opportunity, and hello, everybody. Yeah, my name again is Greg Hansen. I'm the warning coordination meteorologist at the Weather Service in Boulder. And our main concern from the weather side after the fire now is the potential for flooding and flash flooding and debris flows. With the loss of vegetation and the intensity of the fire, the soil actually cooks and becomes hydrophobic. It doesn't let the water soak in. It makes it run off that much more quickly. And so it takes, compared to what we had before the fire, a lot less rainfall to produce flooding in these same areas. And if it's heavy enough rainfall, we can start to move the actual soil and debris on the slopes and move those downstream. So that's our concern. The National Weather Service is the official warning agency for this type of thing. If we do see what we think is flood producing rainfall on the radar from spotter reports or from rain gauges we have around, we would issue a flash flood warning. We do flood warnings, flash flood warnings. The flash is intended to indicate that we need very fast action to save your life, save your property. So especially if you're in these burn scar areas, know where your water comes from, know the name of the stream that you're on. If you are close to a flood prone area, it'll be a little more flood prone now. And we're still trying to work out the thresholds we will use, but it's going to be something on the order of a third to a half an inch of rain in just 15 minutes, or maybe 3/4 of an inch in an hour are kind of the ballpark numbers that we're looking at. So very light rain amounts to cause flooding. When we do start to get some rain, and even with the initial snowmelt runoff that we'll get later this spring, you're going to see a lot of ash, a lot of sediment in the water, even when it's not flooding. And then it's going to be pretty dirty each time it rains. And we're looking at these kind of conditions for a good 5 years. It takes a while to come back out of this, for the hydrophobic soils to break down, to get some new growth going. So a little bit of rain is a good thing. It'll get these plants growing again. A lot of rain will not be a good thing. As far as warnings go to receive our alerts, we do have a weather radio in Fort Collins, a transmitter that broadcasts pretty well into a lot of the Cameron Peak Fire area. Noaa Weather Radio, Lori's got the picture there. It's a special broadcast that we do on specific weather bands. So it's not your commercial AM, FM. You need a special radio to get that. You can get them anywhere. Get them online. About any online electronics type vendor has them. A lot of times they're in a hardware store or grocery stores. Get one with a tone alert feature. That way, if we do issue a warning in the middle of the night, the alarm goes off and wakes you up. And also there's a feature called SAME, special or specific area message encoding. And that lets you code the radio so it only alerts for Larimer County. So if we issue for other counties, your radio won't go off needlessly. But that's a really good basic way to get warning alerts from the National Weather Service very quickly. Get one with the battery backup in case your power goes out. There are also other ways to receive warnings for the flash flood warnings, especially if we think they're bad. They will go off. They will set off your cell phone, that wireless emergency alert. So that's something that on cell phones you have to opt out of. Please stay opted in. And if your phone is inside the warning polygon that we draw, and your cell towers that serve you are inside that, you'll get the warning through your cell phone too. So that's another good automatic way to get National Weather Service warnings. And Lori may have also some other methods to do that. But overall, yeah, we work with Larimer County. We work with the people that from the U.S. Forest Service and the U.S. Geologic Survey that go into these post-fire areas. They study the soils, see what the burn severity is, and give us an indication of how much rain is going to take to cause those debris flows. And so we take that then and use that as our inputs into warnings. The good news, we've got pretty good radar coverage into the area. The radar at DIA sees it pretty well, and also the National Weather Service radar out of our Cheyenne office. We have access to that data, and that looks into the Cameron Peak Fire really well too. So we've got good radar coverage there, and hopefully we just don't get those heavier rainfall rates that might cause any flooding. And with that, I think I'll stop. If there's any questions, I can take them now or later. And thanks for your time.
All right, Greg, we did have one question in the Q&A, and it was about, do you have a good link that you could share in the chat for the weather radio information? Otherwise, I will give everybody in the chat my email address and I can send them this newsletter. But is there a good source that could be shared for the public for more information about weather radios?
Sure, yeah, I'll throw that in. Do you want that in the chat, you said?
Yeah, and just make sure it's to all panelists and attendees so that they can.
And attendees, I see that. Okay. Yeah, I'll do that. Unfortunately, in my position, I can't recommend a specific radio. But really, if you go for those features I talked about, the specific area message encoding, or SAME, and the tone alert, and there's a number of good radios out there that will satisfy your needs.
Okay, another question was, will flood alerts come over on LEDA 911 too? You want to talk about how the National Weather System alerts come through our system, or do you want me to talk about that?
I can talk a little bit and then let you talk about your end. How does that sound?
Yeah.
So when we issue a warning, we're sitting in our office looking at our computer screen and the radar data. We see where the heavy rain is falling, and we draw a polygon, 5 or 6 point circle around where we think the heavy rain is and the flooding, and points downstream because we know the water is going to flow downhill. We do a little bit of editing and we hit send, and that warning goes out to the world. So when it goes out, it automatically goes to our weather radio. That's one of the first stops it makes. And it also triggers the emergency alert system, the EAS. So that's the one that breaks into TV broadcasts and radio broadcasts on commercial stations that participate in that. And it also goes through another couple of ways and ends up to a number of other services that like Larimer County subscribes to, that helps push those warnings on out to their users too. And I'll let you take it from there, Lori.
Okay, so one thing that's important for folks to know is that within the NOCO alert system through LEDA, you have the opportunity to sign up for specific weather alerts. So if you haven't gone into that system recently, I will put the website in the chat, but it's just lita.org or lita911.org, sorry. And from there, you can look up your address. You can add addresses as you need to. You can sign up for text alerts. But a big thing that is in there is it gives you a list of different types of alerts you could sign up for. So definitely make sure that you're signed up for those weather alerts so that you get the information as soon as it comes out from the National Weather Service. And then there's a question about a siren. What about the siren by the Big Thompson on Highway 34? Will that alarm? That siren is specific for that campground on Highway 34 to alert those residents. We have worked with that campground in the past, but mainly they're going to take any alerts that they get and then they operate that siren. So it's not a county operated siren. We don't have any of those throughout the county. So that will only alarm if that campground, if he needs to activate that for that area, that'll be done from the campground itself. Hopefully that answers that question. All right, I'm going to go ahead and move on, but you guys can also continue to ask questions of the National Weather Service or others throughout this.
Lori.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, this is Triste. I just wanted to add our website to get weather information, www.weather.gov/boo. I can put that in chat. And then even though we do have pretty good radar coverage, it really helps to have ground truth. And I know Greg's been working a lot with our spotter, the forecaster that does the spotter training. They both have been working on the burn scars and having some special spotter training for that. I don't know if Greg wants to add anything about that. Because we could really use some ground truth and some spotter reports, I guess, if anybody's interested in becoming a weather spotter. It really helps to know when the rain falls. Is the radar overestimating, underestimating? Is it accurate? What's happening on the ground when it does fall? Is there any flooding? So any kind of reports like that really help us out, and then we can relay that information. Greg, did you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, no, thanks for bringing that up, Triste. And yeah, that's something that we have forwarded on to Lori, and we'll work with her to get people signed up for it. And I'll just make the offer, Lori, here in front of everybody. I can do another seminar, and we can set it up and everything and get into a little bit more about burn scar flooding and our warning systems, and if people want to be spotters. So that's something that we could set up at another time.
Okay, that sounds good. And I think when we talk about the risk assessment data and when we're going to be putting that out, it might be a good time to do another type of a town hall to go over what that data means to folks, and then talk about some alerts and warnings at that point as well. Okay.
Sounds good.
Lori, one other thing, I put this in the chat. Lori and I are used to saying Lita 911, but they have rebranded to NOCO Alert. So the new website is nocoalert.org.
Yeah, I think either one of them will get you to the same location. Thank you, Shale. So Jody just came on, Jody Shattuck McNally. Do you want to introduce yourself really quick? One of our third commissioner, just so that people know that you're on the line.
Yeah, thank you, Lori, and my apologies. I actually was on a call with a county staff member and about something important, and I looked at the clock and went, oh no, and then I used the wrong link, so I apologize. But my name is Jody Shattuck McNally, and I'm one of the new Larimer County Commissioners voted for District 3. And I actually live in unincorporated Larimer County near the Big Thompson River. I'm about a mile from the south of the Big Thompson River. And so just very glad to be here, and I'm grateful for all this information. And I'll put my email and phone number in the chat as well. And thank you for this opportunity to get this information out. So glad to be here.
All right, great. Thank you very much. Okay, I would like to kind of switch gears a little bit and have Derek speak a little bit about what Summit Stone's able to do, or some of the behavioral health resources that are out there. Derek, would you be able to provide just a little bit of information to our audience?
Yeah, would it be okay if I screen shared for a little bit?
Oh, sure. I'll stop really quick and then that'll allow you to share.
Awesome, thank you. And then here's my general information in the chat right now. And Lori, I am right there with you that Zoom meetings and presentations are not my best platform, but I appreciate everybody working with me on this one. So can everybody see my slides?
Yes, they're coming up.
Okay. So kind of as I was getting to a little bit earlier, Colorado Spirits is a FEMA-funded and SAMHSA-funded crisis counseling program that responds. We are usually naturally stood up after natural disasters, and I'm sure folks here can recall that we've been through the 2012 wildfires, the 2013 floods, pandemic, and now a wildfire again. So these programs definitely stand up with the support from our federal and state partners. And Greg, I appreciate it. I had forgotten about the term hydrophobic or hydrophobic with the soils. Got to learn that term after the 2012 floods, unfortunately, or fires. All right, so as a team, what we are able to provide is basically free, anonymous, and confidential emotional supports, either individually to couples, to families, to kiddos, teens, whomever has been directly impacted by COVID, as well as when we started this program back in, we got our feet on the ground in July, we know that folks throughout the county, throughout the state, basically everybody's been affected by COVID in one way or another. So it doesn't really matter the degree of the impact, but our team and our services are here for everybody. And for a majority of the time right now, our services, those individuals in those group meetings, those are virtual and or telephone calls, which does help a little bit with the anonymity of folks who just want to reach out and just need somebody to talk to. I would definitely highlight, in my experience, this pandemic disaster is definitely different than the one that I lived through when we were affected by the 2008 Northern Colorado tornado, also known as the Windsor tornado, and then responding to the fire and the floods, because during those we could be out there in person and really connect with folks in that individual setting, whether it's in their home, their business, the community center, wherever they're at. So this one, it's been a little more trying to get those supports and those connections out there, keep our name kind of on folks' radars. And for those of you who might have had this feeling, but not really sure for a term with it, I believe right now a lot of folks are going through COVID fatigue, pandemic fatigue. It's kind of everywhere, it's around us. So here's a slide that I developed just to highlight the difference of our team versus traditional outpatient and intense services. Those calls where folks might need a 72-hour hold, or both law enforcement and co-responders would be this top category for the IOP, intense outpatient, and or those intense services where there's going to be really hard focus on making sure that we've got supports either right there with folks and or they're in a location where they can continue that ongoing treatment. Kind of what my day job is when I'm not working disaster response recovery is outpatient therapy. So that's where you're meeting with a clinician, maybe weekly in the beginning, kind of scaling it back to every couple of weeks, every 3 to 4 weeks when things are going really well. Group participation is encouraged, but not necessarily needed. And we have some of those caring contacts that we can provide with case management. And then when these disasters pop up, this is kind of where we come in that third tier. It's definitely a less intense service, and it's not meant for any type of tracking personal information. We don't create goals and treatment plans with folks. It's that brief interaction, that bridge to kind of support folks as they're going through the process. And I did promise I was going to try to keep this short. So overall, the basic definition of a disaster is natural man-made occurrence, an event, a situation that pretty much alters the cause of people's lives and or causes human suffering and that life-changing event. So we know that when our programs get stood up, the resources in the local communities, the states need to be overwhelmed, and that's when they reach out to state and federal partners and we go pretty much hand in hand with presidential declarations when we have these disasters. And then so these are some of the topics that we talk about when we're doing presentations, talk through and kind of acknowledge kind of where people are at. We're not focusing on the past histories. We're not looking at how their childhood was and so forth. It's where are they at right now? How are they doing? We definitely check in with how's their anxiety? Are they feeling connected? We know with COVID right now, a lot of people are feeling that really isolated disconnect. The messages are out there for the physical or the social distancing, but it's also that social distancing that just kind of pulls folks away from each other, those natural supports that are built in their neighborhoods or around their coworkers or people at church, people that they see, often, they're pulled away from that right now. And so that physical distancing is paired with the social distancing that seems to have the ongoing effects. And then we definitely have folks like myself and some other clinicians who have experience with SUD, substance use. And we can definitely talk about and work with folks at a brief, limited contact about the fact that we know substance use usually goes up after a disaster. One of the other ones that's not on here is that we know domestic violence concerns definitely go up during and after a disaster. And then my slides. And then this is the other one that I think really hits home when we're talking with folks throughout the process of responding to a disaster. The biggest difference, again, for the pandemic versus a natural disaster, there's usually that kind of warning, kind of as Noaa was talking about with, thank you, Greg. We know that event is probably coming, it's on the way. With the tornado, there was little to not much warning that we knew that the hailstorm was coming through. It was going to be a really bad thunderstorm, and it developed into a tornado. It was a one-day event, and so that impact happened, and now the community comes back together. We definitely see the heroic phase and the honeymoon phase kind of go hand in hand. With the tornado, it was that, I remember it vividly, having a family loss the 2 days before, and then that tornado impacted on a Thursday. Just getting those community supports. Actually, the program at the time was really encouraging for me, and I got to use some of those services as I was going through this process right here of how we respond to a natural disaster. But again, so the biggest thing that we've been noticing compared to a natural disaster with this pandemic, this impact phase has definitely been different for folks who've either lost their jobs, lost their homes, have contracted and are COVID positive, and or it's been a prolonged separation, and then down the road, they contracted and they're positive 3, 4, 6 months into this process. And so their impact date, as well as the anniversary, which usually is acknowledged to mark a 1-year point. And as we kind of talk through this, this is a slide from FEMA and SAM, so we acknowledge anniversary, but it's also an acknowledgement of where did we start 1 year when impact, the events, the situation occurred, and looking at the progress folks and family members and community members, first responders, everybody makes over that 1 year period. And so this is one of those slides that I definitely like to use when I'm doing presentations. And then this was one of the toughest topics for me to kind of acknowledge and work through when I was affected by the tornado. Because I remember many times just sitting in my garage, looking at everything that was apart and over here scattered and over there. I just wished it would go back to normal. I just wish I could have everything the way it was on May 21st as compared to what happened on May 22nd. And for me, I had to work on and get to know and understand, going through the process, my new normal was going to be a part of who I am. And that's why when we ever do these programs, we never use the word victim. We're talking with survivors. We're talking with residents. We're talking with community members. The folks are survivors of this event. And as they move through this process, they learn the skills, they build the supports. They kind of get a sense, that empowerment sense back as they track how they've progressed over the year. And then again, for our presentations and topics, we can talk through these different points. Definitely making our presentations more, either are they kid friendly, are they family friendly? Are we talking to classrooms? Are we talking to professionals in the field? Are we talking to some some of the other professionals out there. And then we always talk about different ideas for coping. If I can leave anything tonight, the one thing I know I like to check on with my team members, my coworkers, anybody in the community I might meet with, I ask them to check on 5 areas. And we got a nice little button that I keep with me since all the way back to the tornado. And it is, how's your 5? So it's, how's your love life? How are you eating? How are you sleeping? How's your work? And are you enjoying play, and or are you having fun? And so that's the 5 things I like to check on: your love life, eating, sleeping, work, and how's your play. And then here's some of our community partners that we work with. Our main number is connection, or is a partnership with Connections in the health district. So when they call into the support line, they can select any of the prompts. 1 will definitely go to Connections, and then prompt number 3 goes to ourselves. And then there's the main line for our crisis line that's available for all residents of Northern Colorado. I like to highlight this one too, because anybody who is in crisis 24/7 literally can get a hold of a clinician live, and they don't need to be a client with Summit Stone. They can just be a random resident and get actual support from a live clinician 24/7. And then here's my contact information, which I hope landed in the chat. And thank you for your time tonight. And that's a brief overview of myself, Colorado Spirits, and the Crisis Counseling Program with Summit Stone Health Partners. I'm going to stop sharing.
Great, thank you very much. Do you want to, you already put your contact information in the chat, right?
Yeah, it's there. Thank you.
Okay. If there's any questions for Derek, you can go ahead and put them in the Q&A. Otherwise, we did have one more question regarding the weather really quick so that I don't forget it. And I think that somebody had answered it within the Q&A, but it was, where are the weather stations? There's so many microclimates in this area. This person lives next door to Devil's Backbone, and they were looking for a specific geographic location. So does somebody want to just answer that for anybody else on the phone who might have the same question? Stephen,
I can answer it. I don't know where that specific location is. Sorry, I'm pretty new to this area. Let me start my video. But I put in there's a Meso West site that I put in there, and I can put it in the chat too. Can everyone see these answered questions? I'm not sure. I'll put it in the chat too, just to be safe. But there's this Meso West site, and it pulls in all weather station data. And as long as you set it to all networks, and I have the instructions on how to do that, I'll put it in the chat as well. Then you can pull up all the weather stations in the county, and you can kind of figure out which one's closest to you. It's over a map, so it should be, as long as you know the area visually from a map, you should be able to figure it out. But that's the best answer I have. I don't know if somebody with the National Weather Service has a better answer.
Yeah, no, the Meso West site is pretty good for the all the publicly available data there is out there. Yeah, and unfortunately, you can never get a dense enough rain gauge network. It seems like the maximum rain never quite falls in the rain gauge. So, but between the rain gauge reports that we do get and the radar, we've got pretty good coverage for that area.
All right, great. So what I want to do next, I guess, is I'm going to go through this newsletter. We've been showing you pieces and parts of it throughout this session here, but I'm going to show you, go over a little bit of information about what's coming this spring and summer. And this will give people an opportunity in the building department or the assessor's office. And then also I'll call on Claire. She's with the Long-Term Recovery Group and United Way, just to answer some questions about some of the stuff that they're doing and how they're helping people out. So this newsletter was released to the public. We sent it out via a bunch of different methods through social media, as well as getting it out to some of our distribution lists. So if you guys are not on this, the distribution list to get information about recovery and restoration activities, please send me an email and I can get you on whatever list you want to be on. If you just want to get the newsletter, I can send that to you. Or if you would like to be on further distribution lists to get information, we can add you to that. We do have a couple of those. Shale has the Larimer Connects newsletter that goes out, I think weekly. She can tell me if I'm wrong. But that has a bunch of information about both COVID as well as the wildfire, as well as just community partnerships and community engagement efforts. And then Michelle, she is our public relations manager. I probably have that title wrong, but she also has a distribution list specific to those who lost structures or lost property within the fire area to get them specific information about the fire itself or restoration and recovery activities. So we did send this out at the beginning of February. I'm just going to go over a couple of things because I think that it's going to be important for you guys. One is we get a lot of questions from folks about restoration. So do we seed, do we mulch? How do we keep erosion from happening? So I did want to let you guys know that there's a couple of webinars coming up about seeding and about forest health. The CSU Extension does webinars pretty frequently. So those are in this newsletter with the link to join that if you guys are interested. Also, the United Policyholders, they have a Road to Recovery. They have online workshops all the time. And so I just provided the website here. And again, it's in the newsletter, but the website here will get you to all of their different offerings, but they do a bunch regarding insurance. So if you guys are having, difficulty with insurance or questions about insurance, United Policyholders is really a good organization to provide you guys some assistance along those lines. I do have a question for Derek, but I'm going to move through this really quick and then I'll get back to that. So the next thing is for those folks who had a dozer line or a hand line on their property during the fire, if it wasn't repaired during the fall, Stephen is really working on the suppression repairs for this spring. So we're hiring a contractor to finish up those suppression repairs. We're not doing seeding or rehabilitation. What we're really doing is we're trying to take that hand line or that dozer line and repair it back to where it needs to be so that the ground can recover. And also so we don't have any kind of erosion problems. So we already have a list of people who have signed up for this and a list of people who had dozer or hand line repairs on their property. We've reached out to those folks, but just so you guys know that some of that that work is going to be happening this spring. Stephen, I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to say about this piece.
No, not right now. You covered it all, I think.
Okay. I think something that you guys are going to be very interested in is we have been working pretty extensively throughout the winter. This fire, it stopped because of winter. So in a way that was good because it gave us a breather. It stopped the fire. And it also gave us some time over the winter. I should turn on my video again. It gave us some time over the winter to work through what's really the risk that people are going to be facing. We talked about erosion, we talked about flooding. So the U.S. Forest Service has conducted what they call a burned area emergency response assessment. It's called BEAR. And what that does is it really tells us within that burn area, what are some of those higher risk areas where that soil, the burn severity of the soil is really bad. And we might see erosion or some of the flooding that Greg was talking about. Those reports are now available and they're public and they're available at INCIWeb. So that website is here. Those reports just give you some basic information about your area, and it's going to say what the Forest Service is able to do on forest land to do treatments. What we've done from that is we have expanded that effort, and we've done a risk assessment with our contractor to really look at what are going to be the impacts and the hazards to private lands and some of our county lands as well as state lands, the stuff that maybe the U.S. Forest Service isn't as focused in on. So we will have the risk assessment report, a draft of it by the end of this month. And I'm hoping the beginning of March, we'll be able to get a report out to everybody, to the public, about what we think the risk is in certain areas. This is a very large fire area. So obviously we're going to have different risks depending on where you're at. And the terrain, it's definitely diverse throughout that entire fire area as well. So some areas might not have many problems, or maybe the burn severity wasn't bad. It just went across the ground and it's going to be able to come back pretty easily. There's going to be some other areas that you guys probably know of already that really did burn badly. And so we're going to have to look at those areas and see what we might be able to do to try to keep some erosion from happening. So this risk assessment, again, I will be sending out a new newsletter in March, and that's really going to be focused in on what those results of that risk assessment were and what that means for folks within the fire area. So I just wanted to make sure you guys knew about that piece. I do get a lot of questions about kind of what the assessment looks like and if that information is going to be available publicly, and we do plan on doing that. We get a lot of questions regarding the disaster declarations. What I want you guys to know is disaster declarations, it's not a one and done thing. It's really like pieces of a pie. We have to try to figure out what parts of the pie do we qualify for, and then we have to give different information to different federal and state agencies to determine if we meet those thresholds. So we have applied for several declarations. We have been granted the FEMA Public Assistance Program, and that program is really going to be able to help us do some debris programs for everybody in the fire area. I'll talk in more detail about that. We didn't really have a lot of damages from the fire on public infrastructure. We do expect if we do have some wide scale flooding that we could have some of that, but that would be a separate disaster. We also applied for the FEMA Individual Assistance Program, which would provide some monetary assistance to private property owners. FEMA did deny our application for that. They said that we did not meet the thresholds. So now we're going through the process of trying to get a small business administration declaration, which also provides assistance to private property owners as well as businesses for economic loss and otherwise. So I have reached out to a bunch of folks who have lost property or lost residential structures to try to meet that threshold. And I've sent that to the state. They're working through that right now. Both Grand County and Larimer County are working together. So if one of us meets the threshold for the declaration, both counties as well as Boulder will get the Small Business Administration declaration. So that's a big focus area right now to try to get that declaration as soon as possible so that we can provide some assistance. The difference with the Small Business Administration is it provides low interest loans to people and businesses, where FEMA is more of a grant program. But FEMA, they only provide about $30,000 as a max to folks, so it definitely doesn't make you whole. Where the Small Business Administration, the low interest loans could be for the full amount that you need, and it's very low interest. So I think there's some benefits to both programs, but just so you guys know where we're at. And then finally, the other program that we did get approved for through FEMA is the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program. So that just provides some funding to the county where we can apply for different projects to mitigate the threat of flooding and erosion, as well as wildfire threat in the future. I'm going to stop really quick and see if there's any questions. There is a question for Derek. It asks, what resources are there for surviving family members who lost someone to COVID?
Yep.
And it looks like Derek is answering that question now.
Yeah, I'm in the process of typing a response, but as a general response with that, our organization and our team definitely has that emotional component that we can offer. One that I know that I personally have found a lot of comfort in is actually Pathways Hospice over here in Loveland. They've personally helped me with my recent loss during this time. That, you know, it's not through my agency, but they've been really great. As far as it goes for other types of resources, I would definitely recommend reaching out to Lutheran Family Services. Because I don't know what exactly resources are available now, and kind of as they become available, the message gets out there, and then folks are connected to those resources, and then it's just kind of in a process waiting for the next round of resources to come available. But Tanya, I'm going to send you a personal message here in a second too.
Great, thank you very much. All right, I'm gonna go through a few things. I did mention debris. This is probably going to be one of our bigger programs through the spring and the summer. Obviously, this fire created a ton of debris. We have one of the big programs that we're going to do is hazard tree removal. So I believe through FEMA, we're going to be able to do both private roads as well as public roads, which is great news for us. We do not wish, you know, as you guys are in that area, you know that trees now fall with the wind pretty easily. They can fall across roads, or they can hit somebody who's walking down the road or a car. And so we really want to take care of those road systems to ensure that you guys can get in and out of those areas easily, especially with wildfire season coming up, as well as possible flood risks. We want to ensure that those egress routes remain clear. So that's a priority for our office to work through that as soon as we can when the snow melts. We are already working with our debris contractor to make sure that they're ready for that as soon as we're able to go into that area. We're also going to be working on streamway debris to the extent that we can. We don't want to remove everything from a stream system because that makes the water move faster. And in some cases, we don't want to do that right now because the water's already going to be moving pretty fast. But it is important to take out that debris that might cause a dam or any kind of obstruction to culverts or bridges that would then cause flooding around that area and around that road, and maybe wash out a road or wash out personal property. So we are going to be looking at streamway debris more throughout the spring and the summer as well, before peak runoff. And then the one program I don't have a lot of information on yet, but I have sent the information to FEMA, is the right-of-way debris program, which would really help the private homeowners who lost property, or even those who lost land and have a bunch of tree debris. It'll allow us to then collect all of that debris along a public right-of-way. So we'll have specific areas within the fire where people can move the debris, and then we'll pick it up and take it to the landfill. That will allow folks who are impacted, you won't have the costs associated with the landfill. We'll be able to cover those costs, and we'll be able to also, I'll let Claire talk a little bit more about this, but we are working with some of our volunteer organizations to assist private landowners on private land, because the county is restricted legally in some cases on using public funding for private land issues. So this is the way that we get through that, is we partner with our volunteer and our nonprofit agencies. They assist people on private land. We move it to the right of way, and then we as a county can pick it up on that right of way. So hopefully that makes sense, and it's not too confusing for folks. And then I do want to kind of throw this over to Claire. Let me see about the questions really quick. I have a question that says, as part of hazard mitigation, will there be any projects along Upper Buckhorn area 44H, and will that work be done in tandem to the road rebuilding related to the 2013 flood? It's funny that you mentioned that because, we finally got FEMA to approve us to rebuild County Road 44H. And then we had this fire, which also impacts 44H. It looks like the impacts are in a different area. So the contractors are rebuilding that road now. We don't think that there's going to be anything that upsets that, but our engineering department has been working with us on the risk assessment, and they are looking at County Road 44H to see if we need to do any erosion control or any other work on culverts in that area. We already have approval from the county commissioners to upgrade culverts as we see we need to for county culverts, so that we can keep that water moving through the area. So hopefully that helps. The risk assessment is going to give us more information, but I do know the engineering department and Road and Bridge have been working hand in hand to determine what are those risk areas and how do we best mitigate that risk. And County Road 44H has been part of that conversation. All right, Claire, do you want to kind of talk about the long-term recovery group and some of the efforts that you guys have underway?
Yeah, thank you so much, Lori. The long-term recovery group is a group of agencies that come together during disasters to lend support to the survivors and the other agencies that are working on recovery and mitigation. This year, this disaster, it's the Volunteers of America and United Way of Larimer County that are leading those efforts. We have several committees that are working throughout the fire disaster. We had a donation center earlier, right before the holidays, and we collected a lot of new items, and they were distributed to about 22 families. We still have extra materials, and we plan to reopen that center in the spring, especially around our spring cleanup and those equipment needs that are going to exist. We have done debris removal in the area. I just got a second round of invoices from Gallegos. So we had 7 roll-offs in the area. They were spread out on right-of-way areas. And we allowed homeowners and property owners to put their debris in the dumpsters, and the Larimer County Fire Recovery Fund picked up that expense. We have removed them for the deep winter. There's not a lot of cleanup that can happen in weather like we're having this week, but we will replace them in the spring, as Lori alluded to earlier. So look for those in April, and we'll keep them out there for a few months. We have another committee working on construction, so working with households and property owners that want to rebuild. We have a volunteer committee working with different agencies that come in both nationally and locally to provide that trained, skilled volunteer level work, as well as our community Hearts and Hands volunteers. So we have a lot of companies and citizens in the community that want to give back and want to help property owners rebuild. We're waiting on a prioritization list coming down from our Watershed partners to identify what are those most at-risk properties and areas. And then how do we prioritize those and match them with skilled and unskilled labor that we have coming in? And how do we work with the property owners to gain access and permission and have releases to be on the property? And then you add in the other element of COVID and masks and gloves. So we're doing a lot of coordination right now in the winter. Our Unmet Needs Committee meets monthly with our case managers to talk about some of those emerging unmet needs that our property owners and fire survivors have. We have about $1.2 million in the fund, thanks to some very generous donors, foundations, companies that want to see our area come back strong. So we're distributing that as unmet needs emerge. And yeah, we have Derek and emotional support, as well as Laura Nelson from the Interfaith Alliance. And I think that is about it. Shale just popped a link into the chat for you. It's our long-term recovery website that talks more about our work and how our different partner agencies come together in times of crisis to help each other. And there it is again. Anything else, Lori?
No, that was great. I did want to put up the case management phone number for anybody who is needing some assistance. Here's the phone number here. And then also that website that Claire was just talking about is also listed in this newsletter. Do you guys see when I pull up, do you guys just see the newsletter for the panelists, or do you guys see whenever I pull up the question answer? I just want to make sure I'm not doing it wrong.
We only see the
I see the newsletter. Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, thank you very much. Okay, so I'm going to go through a few more things that are in this newsletter, and then I think I'm going to open it up to our building department, our assessor's office, and our commissioners to provide any information that they have, and then really we're going to open this up to other questions we have. So we talked about the flood alerts. Emergency alerts, you guys had asked that, or somebody had asked that question about how do you sign up for emergency alerts, or are the weather alerts going to come through? So if you go to the https at nocoalert.org, that'll get you to their site, and you can put in your information and sign up for specific weather alerts there. And then that is it for the newsletter. So I'm going to stop sharing really quick. We do have one more question in the Q&A for right now. It's, can you speak to roads such as Ballard or Crystal Mountain Road, Upper Buckhorn, any partnerships between county and U.S. Forest Service roads with regards to hazard mitigation? What I can tell you is we have a, it's called the Larimer Recovery Collaborative, and we have a collaborative specific to COVID recovery, and we have a collaborative specific to wildfire recovery. We meet every other week on Mondays, and it involves all stakeholders. So the U.S. Forest Service is there, the county offices are there, the watersheds are part of this. Our state agencies and some of our federal agencies are part of that as well. And we share information during those meetings about what everybody's working on. And we are trying to coordinate as much as possible to ensure that if there is something that we can do, say that there's something that we really want to do, but we're going to need U.S. Forest Service permission because some of it's going to impact their lands. Katie Donahue, who is with the U.S. Forest Service, she's on those calls, and she's able to tell us right away how they can try to fast track some of that, whether it's a permit or whether it's a special use consideration. So we are trying to coordinate as much as possible so that we don't run into roadblocks. I will say that some of this, though, is cumbersome. We are dealing with state and federal programs, and there's a lot of requirements with those programs, and especially if we're using federal monies. So we're going to do everything we can on the front end to try to have as few roadblocks as we can. but there will be some delays on some stuff that we want to get done just because we need to go through the right process. So hopefully that answers the question. As far as Crystal Mountain Road and Ballard specifically, the risk assessment is going to tell us more. We know that Crystal Mountain is one of the areas that was heavily impacted. We know that the soil burn severity there is high, but most of that's private land too. So again, what can we do in that area? And then what can we do to educate folks within Crystal Mountain about how they can help on their property or on private lands? And Shale, maybe if you could talk a little bit about Larimer Connects, because I know that Crystal Mountain was one of those areas that wanted to look at that. And that's really about community building and how a community can help themselves and then partner in with us, with those volunteers, the nonprofits, and then the county as well.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about that. So Larimer Connects was really started 4 years ago now. And really the purpose of the program is to foster that neighbor to neighbor connection building in our communities, because communities that are well connected recover more quickly. They know how to band together really well. They know how to access resources and how to share resources within the community. And so in a recovery perspective, this is already happening. We're starting to have people reach out to us saying, hey, my neighbors want to work together to figure out how we can clean up our properties or help one another out through this. And we want to support that as much as possible. And so as Claire mentioned a little bit earlier, we're working together to figure out how we can mobilize volunteers to help support these efforts, or how we can connect different groups to resources that might be able to support what you're doing. And so I don't want to limit it necessarily to just being a community cleanup day, but if there's any other ideas that people have on ways that we can support folks that are working together in recovery, we want to do so and have a conversation around it. I have a ton of information that I send out through my Larimer Connects e-newsletter, which I put the link to that in the chat for folks. But we are looking at how we can kind of prioritize community properties. So first of all, we want to work with communities that are doing efforts with their neighbors. We want to try to avoid one-offs as much as possible, because volunteers are obviously a limited resource, as much as we know we have a great capacity here, but we do want to be cognizant of that. And then you have COVID and everything else that kind of compounds that and impacts that. But obviously we also want to focus on those areas that are most at risk as well. So we are kind of overlaying the two. So our community is motivated and wanting to support one another, but also are they in an at-risk area and need work done right away. So we have a lot of resources we can leverage here, and we're happy to talk through that with you. I know there was a few folks that have reached out already from Crystal Mountain and Storm Mountain that I want to definitely get back to. We're still kind of figuring out the process as far as getting volunteers and all of that, but we want to get started on that as soon as possible here, as soon as the weather lets up. So, but happy to answer any other questions people have about that.
All right, thank you. And I think that the biggest thing there with what Shale's talking about is we can all recover faster if we're all working together, instead of, if the county just does an effort and we're not talking to the public about it, it can cause you guys harm, or maybe you just don't know that it happened and you missed out on an opportunity. So we want to be as transparent as we can. Again, we have barriers to success though too, and to some of the stuff we can do, so we can fill that in with community support. And then again, those nonprofits and volunteers that can come in and really get a lot of bang for whatever buck we have. So I do think that that's going to be important as we move forward. So if you do have a community that is engaged and you have neighbors who really want to get something going, we have had really good success with the Larimer Connects program in the past. And so I think that would be a good avenue for you guys. And then we can really help you through the long term, which this, fire recovery takes years. Depending on what's going on with the weather. So I think that would be good.
And one other thing too, for those that like Facebook, I have started a Facebook community group for people to share ideas with one another. So there's just a few people on there right now, but we'd like to see that grow. So in my newsletter that I linked here, there's a link to that Facebook page. So we just make sure that people are willing to be kind to one another and stuff like that in that space. But that's a good opportunity to start reaching out to people if you haven't already.
And Greg Hansen put some great information in the chat. I'm glad that he did about flood insurance. We haven't talked a lot about that here. We did in the first session that we did, the webinar that we did. But for anybody in this fire area, now's the time to try to get flood insurance. And everybody can get flood insurance through the National Flood Insurance Program. Everybody's eligible for that. But because the flood risk is higher, it's important to try to get that insurance now before spring. There's a 30-day lag time. So by the time you sign up, there's 30 days before you're covered. The state will work with you on that, and FEMA will work with you on that if there are some flood damages. But if you haven't already thought about that, your homeowner's insurance will not cover you for the kind of flooding that we might see. So the flood insurance program is definitely something that you want to work with your insurance company on. And if you have any questions about that, we can definitely help you with that as well. Also, for any other insurance type questions, again, the United Policyholders is really good. They specialize in this and they can answer any questions for you guys. So I don't have any pending questions right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this up to our commissioners to see if you have any comments that you want to share with the group or anything specifically that you'd like to talk about. And then we will just open it up to questions. We're at 7 o'clock now, so we have 30 more minutes in this available. So if any of you guys want to speak up, go ahead.
Yeah, Lori, I'd like to say just a couple of words. First of all, as always, I'm impressed by your knowledge of these issues and the team spirit that I see with various community agencies. So I'm just very grateful for that. I think two things I would add that are specific and relevant. One is that last week, Lori presented to the commissioners a detailed debris removal action plan, and she can get into it more if she would like. But we submitted this to the state or to FEMA, I believe, and we're waiting to hear back from them. But basically, there are 6 programs that are included in this debris removal action plan, and the newsletter presentation, Lori touched on those in general. But there's some cost estimates, and basically what we're trying to put this in place, and we'll be discussing this, the commissioners, at an upcoming work session in the next few weeks. So I wanted to share that there is a detailed debris removal action plan, which deals with everything from public and private land, removal of damaged property, dead and fallen trees, and certainly stream debris and so forth. So I think that's a very positive thing, and we'll have more information in a couple of weeks, and the commissioners will need to make some decisions there. The other thing I wanted to share with folks is that, long term, we're looking at these issues of public safety and emergency management as they relate to natural disasters that are as a result of, intense or extreme weather situations. And many of us believe that it's correlated to climate change, and we know that the temperatures are going to rise, drought conditions will be more prevalent. And so in a proactive way, we're looking at these things down the road. How can we do adaptation? How can we do mitigation? And what is the county's role in addressing, some of these weather events, these extreme weather events that are correlated, connected with changing climate. Thank you, Lori. That's all I have to share.
Okay, thank you. And Jody or Kristen?
Just a couple things. I think that John touched on most everything. I just wanted folks to know that clearly there's a lot of information here, and thank you to everyone in the county staff that's been working on this and all our partners in the community. If you feel sort of overwhelmed by information, or you need other information or more resources, please feel free to reach out to one of the commissioners. We're happy to kind of point you in the right direction and help you get any answers that you need, any questions that you have answered. And then just wanted to say, I think we're doing another one of these kind of forums about fire recovery a week from Saturday. So I think it's 27th, I believe.
Yes, that's
10:30 to noon. And then also wanted to let folks know that Congressman Neguse is also doing a wildfire summit. That is tomorrow. I'm looking at my calendar, from 12 to 1, and he'll be talking He'll have the governors and both senators on with him, and they will also be talking about, with stakeholders about problems associated with wildfires and seeking collaborative solutions. So that might be an opportunity for a little more information. But yeah, please reach out. We want to do what we can to help, and clearly, if we need more federal dollars coming in, we will advocate for those at the federal and state level. And so, but any way that we can help, we're here to help you. So please be in touch.
Great, thank you. And I to add to that, let me turn on my camera. I keep forgetting to turn on my camera. I'm not good at this whole facilitation thing. So the one thing that I did want to add to that is I do have a meeting set up with all of the state leaders in emergency management. So the Division of Fire Prevention and Control, the Colorado Water Conservation Board, the Department of Local Affairs, the Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Management, as well as the Office of Emergency Management. And we're going to be talking about legislative issues and financial issues that come up from both wildfire response and recovery. So we're going to be looking at forest health, the watershed health, because our watersheds here in the county, they feed a lot of people, water. So we want to make sure that remains healthy. And if there's any way that we can do more with regard to mitigation or climate action, any of those things, we will be bringing up at that meeting. So I did want to bring that up to you guys so you know that we're working this kind of from all levels as well. Jody, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Thank you, Lori. I agree with both the other Commissioner Kafalos and Commissioner Stevens. We're here for you. We're here to help you get connected. And I did put my email and phone number in the chat, so reach out to us at any time. I do have a community conversation tomorrow at noon, and you can find that link. I'll try to put that link, or maybe Michelle could put that link for Estes Park for a community conversation from 12 to 1 will be the Mayor Pro Tem of Estes Park and some staff from the county and from the town board of Estes. And also on Saturday, I have one with the Mayor of Berthoud from 9 to 10, and maybe I can get those links in the chat, and those are open to everybody and anybody from the county and the commissioners, as well as they want to come. But we'll be talking mostly openly, but if you want to come and comment or ask questions then, or call or email me anytime. There's a lot of information, and I know it is overwhelming, and I know that this is a lot of things to think about, but I encourage you all to reach out and use those behavioral health resources. We're all kind of in this together, and I think we all have felt the stress. I serve as the liaison for the Behavioral Health Council, and we know we're getting some grant money coming out. $2.5 million is coming from the Behavioral Health Initiative and out into the community. So also, if you have some partners that you think might be a good resource for going for some of that grant money, let us know. We can help direct you with that. But I want to encourage everyone to reach out and use those resources, because I do think this is a unique time in our county, and we need to kind of support each other. So that's the only thing I wanted to encourage everyone to use those resources. So thank you, Lori, and thank you everyone here in the panel today. This has been, I believe, a lot of great information.
All right, great, thank you. And I'm glad that you mentioned Estes Park. We do get some questions about the East Troublesome fire. So I do want to let you all know that we are also working on what is the risk to Estes Park, and what do we need to do for hazard tree removal. So we're working with the town of Estes Park. The good news is that a year or so ago, Estes Park and the county worked together to get some contractors for debris. And because we work together, we can use the same vendors, regardless of whether it's in a municipality or the county. So that's good news as well. So they will be part of that hazard tree removal program as well. So at this point, unless Bob or Alan has anything you want to add, I think Alan had a few things that I think would be really good for the public to know, and then we'll just open it up for folks.
Thanks, Lori. I'll just add one thing. The Larimer County Assessor's Office, gets a couple calls a day for people in the fire burn zone. And again, feel free to call as often as you need to get information and reinforcement as to what the assessor's office is doing, and as you decide to rebuild and recover from this event. And again, know that the assessor's office will be making adjustments coming up for the reappraisal, and those notices will be going out May 1st of this year. So feel free to follow up with me or my office at any time. And I did put my number in the chat. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you. And Alan with the building department?
Yeah, thank you, Lori. Again, my name is Alan Key. I'm with Larimer County Building Department. I'm a plans examiner. We just wanted to take a few minutes and just let you guys know, as you're looking at rebuilding, especially if this is your primary house or residence, please on your application note that we are prioritizing primary residence through our review process. Our goal is to have those review comments out to you in 2 to 3 weeks instead of the standard 6 to 8 weeks, since we are such a busy county with building before even the rebuilding happened. So please, as you apply, let us know if this is a primary residence or not. And then also just to reiterate, the rebuild does have to be to the current building codes, current wind and snow loads. And if you need that information, I'll be more than willing to help you out. Reach out to me directly. There at the beginning of the chat, you can see my contact information and my email, which is primary point of contact for me. And we can help you out with those requirements as you are rebuilding.
Great, thank you very much. All right, so if anybody has any questions, you can either put it in the Q&A, or I believe that you can raise your hand. I did want to ask, I don't know if Michelle is still on. She was kind of just helping out in the background a little bit, but that we are recording this, and I do believe that the chat as well as the recording will be available online. So I'll find out more about that unless Michelle has information on that.
Yep, Lori, we are recording, and we can make the chat available. I don't normally make the chat available, but I think I have the capability to do so. So the recording will definitely be put on our YouTube, and I'll see to the chat as well.
Okay, great. And so if the chat isn't available, you guys can copy whatever you guys need from the chat here as well. So I do have a question from Sandy. Can you discuss what specific recovery efforts are taking place or will take place and timeframes from the fire? Or is this dependent upon the risk assessment you mentioned you'll complete later this month? So the recovery is a little bit dependent upon that risk assessment, because what I don't want to do and what happens a lot after recovery is you see the, the kind of the big shiny thing and you go after it and you fix it, where next to that is a much bigger problem. and now we don't have the resources or the funding to be able to handle that problem, which is going to cause either more harm to the community or more harm to the environment or the watershed. So the risk assessment, by having the winter, it really helped us to do all the analysis that we needed. All the data is there now, and we've been meeting, like I said, every other week, and we're talking through that. We are also working with the Emergency Watershed Protection Program through the Natural Resource Conservation Service. And what they do is they do what's called exigent work, which is just emergency work. So this spring, we're going to be able to, we already have a contract with them to do some mitigation work for those areas that we think are going to create the greatest harm. But with the risk assessment that we're doing, once we have that written report and we're able to share that publicly, we are going to know more about what those specific projects are that we're going to be able to fund this spring. And then what are the future projects where we're going to be seeking additional funding, either through mitigation programs, resiliency programs, or otherwise. So to answer your question, we do have an idea about some of the projects we're going to do. Like I mentioned, Road and Bridge and the engineering department already know the culverts that they want to replace and upsize for flood issues. But we also have some unknowns. And so we're working through the knowns right now to see what we can do. And then the risk assessment is going to really dial back into what can we do outside of that, and then where is the funding available. So we will have more information in March. And again, we're still going to have snow coverage in March, so we have some time to hone in on those projects and figure out what we can, get everything in place so that as soon as the snow melts and we're able to move into the area, we can do as much as we can. I will say, though, that this is, again, a large fire area. We are not going to be able to do everything for recovery in this first year. So flooding is going to remain a risk to some of these areas. And again, the more that communities can do in support of kind of the larger community area, the better this will be, because we aren't going to be able to to do everything that's needed, this fire area is just too large and there's too many needs. And the burn severity was very bad in some of these areas. So I just want to manage expectations on that. We're going to do everything that we can with all resources that are available to us. There will still be some gaps though, and we may still have some flooding issues because of how big the fire is. And we are working through, that's why the warnings are so important with the National Weather Service. And that's why we're working with all of our partners to ensure that emergency services have the best information so that they can respond as well. So I'm really glad that you guys have participated tonight, because it shows that you're interested, one, in getting information, asking questions, but also it shows that you guys are engaged and that you know that there's going to be some concerns or some challenges ahead. And the more that we can talk about that and be transparent, the better. All right, there's one other question, I think, can Northern Colorado be used to get these webinars and info out to more people in the burn areas? I don't know what Northern Colorado is. Does anybody know, I guess, more about that question? Or can you give me more information about what you mean by NOCO?
Hey, Lori, this is Michelle. My guess is the attendee means NOCO alerts.
Oh, okay. The NOCO alerts can only be used for emergency messaging. So we are not able to send alerts out to phones that aren't regarding some kind of emergency where action is needed. The reason for that is if we use those phone systems for any other reason, people stop paying attention to when they get that reverse 911 call or that emergency notification. So the NOCO alerts can only be used for like if we have a flash flood event or if we have another wildfire, to give you guys information about evacuations or how to remain safe. The best way to get information is we have a recovery website, and I do believe that that was already placed into the chat. And I can place it again if we need to. But that information, all of this information is on that website. And then there are, if you use social media, like Shale mentioned, there's some Facebook pages as well that will give you that information. So sorry, we can't send those alerts out to everybody. It's a law that they have regarding emergency notifications. How about going through the fire department like Wrist Canyon? So that's a great question. I do send all of this information out to all of the fire chiefs whenever we have it. And therefore, they can then send it out, because I know Wrist Canyon has a really great email group. They then send this information out to their group as well. So talk to the fire chief there and just let them know that you're interested in this information going out through that email notification. Many of the fire chiefs in this area do have some internal notification groups. I know Glen Haven has one of those as well. So reach out to those guys and let them know that you're interested, but they get this information as soon as it's available. Even before it's public, we give all of the fire chiefs a heads up the information's coming. They're also invited to go to those recovery meetings that we have where we're talking about the risk assessment as well. Another question I have is, can someone explain what the role of the Department of Homeland Security is in the fire? They had a large presence at the mouth of Big Thompson Canyon. So the Department of Homeland Security at the federal level, FEMA works for the Department of Homeland Security. So FEMA comes in when we ask them to come in. They do assessments based on the fires. So they've done that already, and they determined that we met the public assistance thresholds to do the debris operations that we talked through. We did not meet the thresholds for individual assistance. So we tried for that, but FEMA did deny us for that. Otherwise, the Department of Homeland Security doesn't really have a role. They tell us what programs we are eligible for, and then really the county has to work through those programs to get as much reimbursement as we can for the things that we're going to do. So again, we will be doing debris operations this spring and summer, and then we'll be seeking reimbursement through FEMA for those efforts. So hopefully that helps with that question. Anything else from for anybody in our panel, or any other questions that you all have? I'll wait a few more minutes, and then if anybody on the panel has any kind of go backs that you want to talk through, we can do that. But otherwise, take what you guys need to from the chat. If there's any kind of links that would be helpful to you, I'll leave this up for a few minutes and see if there's any more questions.
Lori, Allen with the building department. One thing I forgot to mention, if you are underinsured or your insurance does not cover the cost of building permits, please reach out directly to the building department. We do have some things in place to be able to provide some assistance with that or the permit fees. So please contact us if that is something that you are in.
Great, thank you very much. We do have a question. Do we know yet any predictions for possible moisture leading to flooding coming this spring? I don't know if Greg or Triste want to talk about that at all, about what you guys are seeing or thinking about spring and summer. Are they still on? Yeah, Triste is still
Yep,
on.
I'm here.
Oh, there's
Yep,
Greg.
and yeah. That's the $1 million question. But right now, we're still in that La Nina pattern that brought us into the winter. And so that will tend to make us a little cooler than normal, a little drier than normal. So what we've been experiencing, I expect to see that continue. That same pattern does pretty well for what we've been seeing with the mountains. With the westerly flow and a little bit of moisture, we'll put some snow in the mountains for some good water supply. So I think the higher elevations of the burn scar, we'll see a little bit more snow, and hopefully get up to near normal for even just the water supply issues. And really, it comes down for the burn scar flooding. It comes down to those isolated afternoon showers and thunderstorms that they don't really have to make a lot of rain to cause some flooding. It's more the rainfall rate, the intensity of that. So that's what we need people to key in on. That said, there is something to be said for, if we've been in a rainy period, kind of wet, but not really causing any flooding, that wets up a lot of the soil and already gets it kind of muddy, and then a heavy rain follows that. That's definitely a period to be more aware of too. But, as far as a seasonal outlook, yeah, it just comes down to those individual day-by-day thunderstorms.
Yeah, we're in one of those areas of Colorado where we have both flood risk and fire risk all at the same time, and it could change from week to week depending upon the weather. So for right now, I think we're just kind of in a holding pattern to see what might occur this spring. I did have a question from somebody regarding how do you get assistance for businesses? And I did want to let you all know that the Larimer County Economic Development folks, they have been working with businesses throughout COVID as well as the wildfire, and they're waiting on that Small Business Administration declaration, but they do have some resources for businesses. So I did put Adam Crow's email address in the chat. Anybody who has a business or business impacts, please reach out to them. They're very responsive and they really want to help people. Plus it gets you on their radar. So if we do get the Small Business Administration declaration, which I really think we're going to get that one, they'll be able to reach out to you about what those business and economic impacts, what those services might be for you. So, all right, we don't have any more questions. So I think I will leave it open for just a few more minutes if anybody has anything. Otherwise, we will close this out. But I do really appreciate everybody joining us tonight. There's, like John said, there's just a ton of information, and I do believe that it can get confusing and it's also overwhelming. So we're trying to put it like in that newsletter where it's a one place where you can get a lot of information. We'll do that newsletter hopefully either monthly or every other month, just to give you guys the updates throughout the recovery. Anybody else on the panel have anything you want to say? All right, well, thank you guys. We really appreciate your time, and I hope you guys all have a good rest of your night.
Thank you, Roman.